Malatris. I'm the Chancellor of the State University of New York. I'm joined by several of our colleagues from the Cortland Committee, which I'll introduce briefly. We have President Eric Bitterbaum, who is the President of SUNY Cortland, as you all know, Mayor Brian Tobin, the Mayor of Cortland, Callie Humphrey, who is the President of the Student Government Association. You have Lisa Perfetti, who is the Director of the County Public Health Department. You have Genevieve Barron, who is the Faculty Senate Chair, the representative of all the faculty on campus, and then Dr. John Graham, who is on my staff, who's our Systems First student advocate, an important position for me. His sole job is to focus on students. And he's done a phenomenal job so far, and I'll have him say a few words, and President Bitterbaum say a few words. We just finished a briefing with the SUNY Cortland community, as well as the broader Cortland community, the county and the city, to talk about the situation that we are going through here at SUNY Cortland. We were here a week or so ago to talk about going on the state mandated pause because of the increase in COVID cases. We have been reviewing the data with the county and the city and the health officials from the college, as well as my staff. And the numbers are still higher than we would like them to be. There's no way of sugarcoating it. The numbers are about 166 cases over this last period of time, which makes us exceed the 100-person threshold mandated by the state. The state allows us to have 100 cases within 2-week periods, and we've exceeded that again. So we talked collectively just now, and we will be extending the pause at SUNY Cortland for an additional 2 weeks as we continue to monitor the situation on the campus. And I want to thank many who have been working on this issue tirelessly. This community has really come together to figure this out. This is not what we found in our briefing, not something specific to just the campus. There has been an uptick in cases across the board. What we did note, which we will leave the questions at the end here, or President Bitterbaum could answer in his comments. Many of the cases that they first had here were largely off-campus students. That has shifted a little bit to more students on campus becoming positive. Thankfully, we have a strong quarantine and isolation protocols in place here in space. So it's being managed, but they've noticed an uptick. And it's something that we've noticed more largely across the board. As many of you know, I've been very tough on students who have been violating codes of conduct and public health orders when it comes to large gatherings and parties. This is not that. We're noticing a little COVID fatigue in many people, which is just more people are interacting with one another in small gathering situations. They're going to dinner with one another, they're going off campus to see friends, as you're seeing in the larger community here. So you're seeing an uptick in cases because of that issue, which just makes us have to double down and redouble our efforts to say, we are all missing our families in many cases. We're not gathering with our friends as much as we would like to. The social distancing, masks, regular hand washing, testing, all of those things have to continue. And we really have to focus on those issues because you can see how cases will grow. And we've had a few hundred cases here on campus. You can see how quickly it spreads. An encouraging sign in our briefing from the SUNY Cortland health team is at one point they were at about 6.5% positive rate of cases. That has decreased to about 2.5%. So the numbers are going in the right direction. The cases are going down, it's stabilizing, so we're hopeful after this 2-week pause that we will be able to restart some of our activities for our students to end at the end of this semester. I'd like to now turn it over to President Bitterbaum for comments. And the one thing that's been a particular concern is why we have our student advocate, Dr. Graham, here is, I would like him to talk about the mental health service component. Many of our students have been struggling. It's a struggle with the anxiety of the normal view of college. This has just exacerbated many of those challenges and anxieties. So I want Dr. Graham to focus on that right after President Bitterbaum. So with that, I'll turn over to President Bitterbaum.
Okay, thank you. Let me share with you that indeed we are disappointed that our numbers did not come down. We think there are a variety of reasons, but we are optimistic now that over the last few days that the numbers have started to, active cases have come down. There were just 8 yesterday. I think part of the explanation is that we have done a lot of testing, massive testing. We did over 3,000 last week. We're doing another 3,000 this week. And we're finding those students that may have been asymptomatic but are positive, and we're able to get them into isolation and also to quarantine through Lisa Perfetti and the County Health Department doing all the contact tracing. So for us moving forward, it's to make sure that our students realize that tomorrow will be better. They do have to just as the Chancellor said, to take very seriously that if we are going to be able to resume a more hybrid model, that they will have to socially distance, wear masks. I think by and large they're doing that. We've spent a lot of time talking to them. I think Callie will verify, our president of our student body in a minute, how this is true, working with the mayor and our community, that this is also how we're moving forward. But it's about messaging, and I think we have discovered in my conversations with students that those that have been found positive, there's a sense of, I have to let my friends know that we have to socially distance. We can't socialize. We've got to get this back on track, and I'm really pleased to hear that in the few cases that I've had an opportunity. But I do agree that mental health and anxiety is very important, and I'm really pleased that the system has a number of strategies besides using our own counseling. So I think Dr. Graham has some really important information to share.
Yeah. Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you, Dr. Bitterbaum. So just to let everybody know, each one of our campuses have a counseling center, and they really serve as the sort of the frontline responders to our students. And our students have really been taking full advantage of those services to the extent that they possibly can. But we do have a responsibility at the system level to ensure that we offer a suite of interventions for our students. And there's one that's really interesting. It's called the Student Telecounseling Network. It's coordinated by Upstate Medical. It's really for more complicated situations with students, particularly in the space of suicide ideation. And more recently, just less than 10 days ago, we're now partnered to expand that relationship, the Student Telecounseling Network, with Downstate Medical. So we're going to give us a little bit of geographical diversity and be able to provide a wider range of services for our students. Then we have a crisis text line for our students. And then we have a very, very unique partnership with one of our campuses, University of Albany. It's a program called Middle Earth. Middle Earth has been around for 50 years doing outstanding work. And through that modeling with Middle Earth, in the short coming weeks, we're going to launch this wonderful program called Quaranteams. And as our chancellor just spoke eloquently about the challenges that we're having with our students, especially in the space of how they're responding and the fatigue that they're going through, the Quaranteams is going to consist of a resident assistant who's in the residence hall that will do wellness checks on the student. Student will get a call from the resident assistant asking how they're doing. There's a set of very structured questions, and depending on how that student responds, they will scale it up to a supervisor if necessary. Later on in the day, that same student gets a call from his academic advisor on how he or she is faring in the academic space through remote learning and things like that, which I think is really great. And then lastly, in that quarantine, it's going to be the resident assistant themselves checking on the student about the food and how things are going writ large. So look out for Quaranteams, and that's something that we're going to be looking forward to scaling across our system.
One last point, and then we'll turn it over to questions. One of the issues that was raised in the meeting today was, given the increase of cases on the campus, is put a strain on the contact tracing and other services that the county provides to find whatever contacts are happening. Thanks to Governor Cuomo and the New York State Health Department, they have offered to allow us to use 25 state contact tracers, investigators to help the county with the increased workload. And we're working actively on other solutions as they come up as well. So thanks to the state of New York and the governor for allowing us to have those resources at that. With that, we will open up the questions just for the rules. Callie Humphrey gets all of the very difficult questions, and we get all the easy ones.
At this time, we'll open up for questions from the media.
Chancellor, the 100 case in a 2-week window threshold has been hit twice. Clearly, that threshold comes with flexibility at a few campuses, including this one. That rule, how did it go from a mandate to we play it case by case?
Well, it's a mandate, right? So we don't, once it hits the threshold, our campuses take the pause as required by the New York State Health Department, and we've done that. I think what we've done in other cases, situations before, is before we even get to that 100 case, we have taken mitigation efforts. Binghamton University being the perfect example, we were recently there. They weren't at the 100 case threshold, but we decided to take a pause at that point because we were working with the county executive and the county health department. They noticed that there was a larger community spread going on, an issue going on in Broome County. We wanted to be active partners in that situation with them. So we took a pause a little earlier than the state mandated us to do, but we follow all state guidance. So if we get to that point, we will take the pause. We're taking the pause today because we've exceeded that. We're extending the pause. But irrespective of that rule, given where the trend is going right now, we would have taken a pause anyway.
So what makes this different, though, than SUNY Oneonta, where you're not shutting down, sending kids home for the entire semester?
It's all trajectory. In the Oneonta situation, that's just why every one of these cases when it comes to COVID is sometimes unique. And that's why you have to monitor this very aggressively. We have 64 campuses with varying different needs and things happening on their campuses. Oneonta, at this point, was still growing exponentially. It was 2 cases, 45 cases, 100 cases, 400 cases, 700 cases over a 2.5-week period or so. You don't see that type of growth here. You don't see that type of unmitigated, uncontained issue here. You see it contained. The health teams working here know exactly where the cases are coming from. We noticed that it was mostly off campus, now it's come a little on campus. And the best thing that we've noticed is the trend is going downward. It was around 6.5% positivity rate, it's now down to 2.5%. So you see the numbers going in the right direction, but if things change, we would adapt to address that emerging crisis, but it's a much different situation here right now.
Other questions?
Are you learning from the situation in SUNY Oneonta, though, as you continue to go to other SUNY campuses, like where we are now, where cases, where students have to go on pause? Have you learned from that situation? Because that was kind of a worst case scenario right out of the gate.
It was a wake-up call, I think, for the entire SUNY system, but I also think it was a wake-up call across the board. When I first got the call on SUNY Oneonta, I wasn't even chancellor yet, by the way. 2 cases. 2.5 weeks later, 711 cases. That's how fast it goes. So I think it told everybody, wait a minute, this virus is still here and it still impacts us. I think we've done a pretty aggressive response effort to that. Every campus is now testing regularly on campus, which I think has helped enormously with monitoring and surveilling the issue on our campus. So you can root out an issue or isolate an issue as it emerges. Thank goodness for the great innovators and healthcare providers at SUNY Upstate Medical, a public university system who developed a saliva test approved by the FDA that is cheap and easy for our students to use, which has been a game changer. So we could do up to 120,000 tests a week. We have now done 224,000 tests on our campuses alone. 0.5% positivity rate, lower than the statewide average. So students are mostly doing the right thing. Test. Second piece was what we learned in Oneonta is compliance is a must. We needed uniform compliance. I put that uniform compliance out. I know it was controversial in some places. Why is the chancellor being so tough? Because this isn't just violating a code of conduct on campus. You host a large party, you don't socially distance, you do the wrong thing, you're violating a public health order, first of all. You're violating state law. There's consequences with that. And I believe in students being adults. They're not children. Most of our students do the right thing. That helped stop a lot of this activity because many of our students, unfortunately, had to deal with severe consequences, suspensions, expulsion, things like that. Third piece which helped us, was transparency. Put up a data dashboard, let the public see what's going on at our campuses, all of our campuses, that our students see. This came from our faculty. You now can see that every day. Those three pieces, I think, in light of what happened at SUNY Oneonta, has helped stem the tide, where we do have a very low positivity rate. Many of our campuses are doing well, better than the national scene in higher education. We are the largest public university system in the entire nation. We're open. Many other large institutions decided to go fully remote. So you can see with those really proactive approaches, it has helped. And the two other pieces that goes along with that is provide student services. Mental health is an important component here. This is a tough time for students. Isolation, generally. Being on campus in a different way is hard. And appointing a student advocate so they have a voice that they can go to that comes right to me every day. That's why Dr. Graham has been a really important piece there. So all of this together, lessons learned from SUNY Oneonta, has helped us and guided us through this to the point where we're doing pretty well as a system.
And do you credit any of that to leadership on the ground at any of these schools? Because SUNY Oneonta obviously is having a changing of the guard right now. Their current president is resigning and new leadership is taking on. What does that say? Is there any correlation between leaders here at SUNY Cortland and us at a SUNY Oneonta? I mean, is it, they need to do their part too to get out the message and to help their campus community through this?
It's leadership across the board. It's a president, it's the faculty, it's our professional staff, it's our students. By the way, our students provide the most leadership. They control their destiny. It's community leadership, the mayor and others. When that's all working well together, things, even when there are cases on campus like we have today, can be managed and they can be handled. Where you lack that leadership and cohesive working together, you see big problems. You see today in Cortland, a unified community and a unified college. Are there problems? Of course. Do you have to work on communications issues? Of course. But overall, you see leadership coming from all of those sectors, and that's why you have more success, even when there are cases like we are witnessing here today. But let's not fool ourselves. There's lots of work to be done. I don't like that there's 166 cases on this campus right now over the last week and a half. That's not where we want to be. That's not where President Bitterbaum wants to be. That's not where the mayor wants to be, or the faculty wants to be, or our students want to be. But let's work and redouble our efforts to lower that number. That's everybody working together.
I'm going to have you take off the chancellor's cap if you can and talk about your role with the governor's office.
Am I literally wearing a cap right now? Is that
You're not. You're wearing a new mask, as we've seen frequently from you, a different mask every visit. We've heard from rural communities about the challenges of getting testing services to its communities. We heard from the president how asymptomatic results are starting to spike again. I'm wondering what the state can do to get testing open and cost-free to these communities, these rural communities that don't have the upstate hospital in Onondaga County like the Syracuse area has.
It's hard as chancellor to talk about testing across the system, across the state. I do think the state of New York does the most testing in the entire nation. At one point, I think we're up to around 130,000 or so tests a day, which is phenomenal. There's something like 750 state testing sites. However, we can expand that to other communities. I think you've seen the state stepping in and doing that. You see the rapid testing sites that are Oneonta. By the way, that's one of the issues we talked about here today, maybe doing some rapid testing even in Cortland. They've been providing those services immediately. And then, however, the SUNY system can help, which we've been helping as well. SUNY Upstate's not just helping with testing on our SUNY campuses, they are providing services to our K-12 schools and some other communities. We're all in. This is an all-hands-on-deck approach. I think New York has done it in a big way and have gotten the testing piece right. But there's a lot more work that we could be doing. So the more you can expand testing, you will do it, and you see the state doing it every day.
All right, we need other questions here. Go ahead, sir.
This might be more of a question for President Bitterbaum, but what is the college doing to mitigate or further prevent these spreads going forward?
Well, first I should add that when we opened up in August, we took a very hard stand with our students, that if they misbehaved, they were gone. And then since the chancellor and the SUNY system has provided additional guidance, that has allowed us to let students know, and students have left in significant numbers. That's one aspect. The other aspect is education, leadership training of our RAs, our head residents. Student government has been very much involved in this, trying to offer through student affairs more opportunities for students while they're in the pause so that they don't socialize with others. So it's a whole laundry list of things that we're attempting to do, and some have been successful and others we will learn from and you know, do additional programmatic things for our campus.
Following that, could there be a step up in enforcement, especially off campus where it seems the majority of these?
If we learn, absolutely. They will be disenrolled. Right now, the Office of Student Conduct is very busy. We have 2 professionals there, and I'm sure right now their office is one after another.
A question in the middle here?
Okay. With SUNY Cortland, or not SUNY Cortland, but SUNY Sports being canceled for the fall and winter, many students don't have that to look forward to. What they have to look forward to is Halloween, just like most. What will be done, whether it be SUNY-wide or in the Cortland area, whether the mayor wants to chime in on that or in the front, what will be done to make sure, because the pause extends through Halloween, and that's a common time where people might not act as they normally would. What is being done? Because that has a lot of community members are concerned. So if any of you could speak on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so let me just share this, and I thank you for the wisdom of your question, right? So there are multiple campuses that SUNY students are participating in, right? But we have a responsibility of making not just the right decision, but also the safe decision. And the safe decision is to allow our students to engage in athletics, but in a very mindful, thoughtful way in terms of having very small, manageable pods, right? Where the density and the social distancing is being strongly considered and adhered to. Right now, our athletic programs, many of them are not allowed to be having scrimmages or intercollegiate competition. But the other part of your question is what does that really do for the student athlete? We're asking our student athletes to do one thing and to do it well, is to exercise emotional discipline, but also be resilient and know that we're just right now, we were on the straight for quite some time, and now we're getting on the curve. And as we get on that curve and things open up and we get a vaccine, we will have intelligent conversations about resuming sports. But right now, the safe decision is to stay the course.
Any last questions?
On
Do you-
Halloween, though, just since you goaded the Halloween question, I don't think the state put out guidance, but in this circumstance, I don't think we should have college-age students trick-or-treating anyway. And if Cali says there's some secret trick-or-treating program, so tell me about it. But I think it does raise an important question. You're all part of the same community, so you have to be mindful of the situation you're on campus. If you're going into the community is really your question. How do you have that interaction? I think the city has been working really well with the campus on maintaining those types of rules and activities to stop any behavior that could lead to a resulting increase in cases. I think law enforcement's been working well together, the campus law enforcement, the city law enforcement. I think our health departments have been working well together. And I think the students have been reinforcing it with each other now at this point. Callie raised this at our meeting, that they know that there's a lot of potential downsides to going into communities and violating either the code of conduct or doing other things. So they're mindful of not wanting to cause harm to somebody else because of the virus either. So I think you actually see more shared responsibility here now. I don't think you'll see as much trick-or-treating going on.
Chancellor, one quick community-related question. I know you're always working to make the relationship one, basically, and I'll talk to Lisa after our public briefing, but the county sent out a release saying the fall COVID surge is here. What should that, in this community, mean for the entire state?
I think you have, listen, there is a fatigue. I get it, I feel it. I've been to now about 30 of our campuses in the month and a half I've been on the job. This is difficult. This is not our natural inclination as humans. We are very social. The distancing, the masks, it's an unusual circumstance. You've noticed how quickly our cases can change. Even a small percentage increase in the state of New York can lead to more hospitalizations, and you see that. We're over 900 hospitalizations now in the state of New York. You can see how quickly it can reverse. Everybody talked about the fall. We were all hopeful, maybe too hopeful, that maybe that wouldn't come, but it's here. You have the flu season, it's colder, people are going more inside. That just means we have to be more vigilant than ever to enforce these guidelines that we have on distancing and masks and other things, because that's the only way to keep the virus at bay. And otherwise, you have to take more dramatic actions. And you see what the state has unfortunately had to do in some of those cluster zones where they basically had to roll back to March-like activities. We don't want to see that across the board. We're mindful of that at SUNY, by the way, because we're part of the larger community. That's why we're testing so much. That's why our students are doing things differently. That's why they're not interacting the way they normally do, because they're trying to reduce the spread themselves. But you see that now. You see in the fall months that it could be a dramatic increase if you're not careful as it gets colder and colder and the flu season comes. So this just means everybody has to be super vigilant.
Last question. All right, thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
Thank you.